In the teachings of Buddha, there was a quote that I really loved. I didn't put it as a display quote, but it's really very powerful. And that quote from Buddha is, "The only effort of any intelligent person in this world ought to be to know something which cannot be destroyed by death." The only effort of any intelligent person in this world ought to be to know something, not to believe in something, to know something which cannot be destroyed by death. And I wonder if you know something. Know means trust. If you trust in something without any doubt that cannot be destroyed by death, certainly it's not your body or any of your possessions, all of which will become dust. Everything on the planet, including you, to put it in Ken Wilber's terms, is tomorrow's food. It's a constant recycling in the physical plane. So what part of you cannot be destroyed by death? What part of you is real, if you will, as Lao Tzu put it? But I knew there was something in the New Testament that really had struck me. So the first is from John 10, verse 34. It says, "Is it not written in your law, I have said, you are gods?" From Jesus Christ. "Is it not written in your law, I have said, you are gods?" Which is really what you have to understand and embrace and know if you're going to become a manifester. You have to know what you are being told here by a great spiritual teacher. You are gods. And the second one was John 14, verse 20, that says, "On that day you will know," see how that word know is always there. You won't believe, you will know. "On that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you." So what is being talked about here? What is being talked about is not something that is physical. It's not like my arm is in your arm, my spleen is in you. What we're talking about here is something that is beyond the physical, that is in you, and in the Father, and in me, and in everything. And if you get this, if you know this, then you begin to see yourself as connected to this divine intelligence that is everywhere, that is always flowing, that is inexhaustible, that is non-judgmental, that is available for you to plug into, just like electricity. And you can do anything you want with it, like electricity. It'll light up a hospital where everybody is reputed to be ill, and it'll light up a house of ill repute. You can do what you want with it. It is there. It is divine. And you are a piece of it. You are connected to it. And once you trust in this, and once you know this, you almost come to a different perspective in your life. Earlier in the first principle, I had talked about these archetypes that Carl Jung referred to. And in these archetypes, he said that we move from athletes to warriors to statesmen to spirit, and then when we are there, we can be all of these things. And one of the things that he also said is that if you don't get to this highest place, this highest archetype, then you will continue to come back and do it. Now, he's talking about reincarnation, and I'm not going to talk about reincarnation here. The way I see it is I think of God as like the ocean. For me, to understand this idea of learning to trust, God is like the ocean, and I am a glass. And I take this glass, and I dip it into the ocean. And I say, okay, what do I have here? And the answer is, I have a glass of God. Now, it's not as big, it's not as strong, it's not as all-knowing, it's not as all-powerful, but it is still God. And just like a wave on the ocean is what the ocean is doing. You are what God is doing. And until you know this, you will never have the trust I'm talking about. You are what God is doing. And if you take a drop of water out of that ocean and you separate it out and you put it over here, you will find that it is weak, that it will collapse, that it has no power, that it can't do anything. Because it is separated from its source. And the same is true of us. When we separate ourselves from our source, from the divinity that is in all things, we take and make ourselves powerless, impotent, unable to do the divine things that we can do when we are united. Both as united with God, or with soul, or spirit, whatever you want to call it, united with each other. You see, it's that separation. It's always that separation. So it's almost like learning to trust in yourself involves trusting in the fact that you have a divinity. And this divinity is evident on the basis of the idea that God is everywhere. And if this intelligence is everywhere, you have to trust that it's in you. And there's no mistakes here. And while you may not always honor everything that you do and that others do, you can see that your essence, your basic essence of what it is that created you in the first place is that divine organizing intelligence that can never die. You've got to know that. You've got to trust in that.
When you are looking for an honest opinion, when you really want help, you're going to go to a person who is not afraid to tell you the truth. And while you know who the people are that you can go to when you want to be stroked, or when you want to be made to feel better, when you need help, and you need an honest, straightforward, truthful answer, you'll respect strength, not weakness. Weakness is saying the thing that makes somebody else feel good. Strength is operating from integrity, from authenticity, from honesty. And people respect that. I know in my own life when I really want to know what it is that I can do to improve something, I know that my wife isn't afraid to tell me that. There's a lot of people who are. There are people who work for me who don't want to tell me that, who are going to tell me the things that are going to make me feel good and make them look good and so on. But I know that my wife, Marcy, will not be afraid to tell me, this is what you have to do, or this is what's missing, or this. And sometimes I don't even like it. And sometimes I rail against it. But I always go to her when I want help or when I want assistance, because I know that she's not afraid to tell me the truth. Operating from strength really means operating from effectiveness in your life. It's almost like you have to develop a code of non-victim ethics for yourself that says, I am a valuable, important, significant, divine creation. I am here for a very short time. While I'm here in form, in the physical body that I'm in, I am entitled to fulfill the purpose or the destiny that I have been assigned while I'm here. I believe in that I'm here for a purpose. And I'm going to get my life on that purpose. And anyone or anything that gets in the way of that, as long as I can behave towards them in a moral and just and honest way, I can say to myself in my moral code of ethics, you do not have a right to interfere. No one has a right to interfere with anyone else's right to live their life the way they want to. No one. As long as you're not hurting anybody else in the process of operating from strength, as long as you're not interfering with somebody else's right to do the same, then whatever it is that you're doing is perfectly all right. You have to be what I think of as quietly effective. And the way that you are quietly effective is you do not teach people not to victimize you with words. Let me emphasize that. Words are not the tools of the quietly effective person operating from strength. It is behavior that counts. You teach people with your behavior how you want to be treated. And here we are, trying to pull our own strings and be our own person, and talking endlessly and ceaselessly and having these arguments and discussions, and it still goes on and it still goes on, and you still find yourself the victim, and you still find yourself picking up after others, or not being respected, or whatever it may be. There's an old saying, it's one of the secrets of the universe: I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And not one moment before. Doing is what teaches people how to understand you. So it is in the process of doing, when someone behaves towards you in a way that is to victimize you, and this is true of virtually everything. Somebody who is yelling and screaming at you, and whether it's your husband or your wife or one of your children or a clerk or whatever, and if you stand there and scream back, it's just words against words, and it doesn't mean anything. But if you leave quietly, leave the room and go into another room, you're sending a signal. I am too dignified and too valuable and too important a person. I think too much of myself to stand here or sit here and take that kind of abuse. So I will be leaving. And you don't have to say those words, you just do it. And in every single expression wherein you are victimized through conversation or through words, there is a way to teach people with your behavior that you are a person who operates from strength rather than weakness. The Queen of England, the President of the United States, the generals that are in the armed forces, the doctors who serve you, the very rich people who live in the fancy homes in the suburbs, the entertainers, the sports stars, all of these people, whoever they are, the movie stars, whoever these people are, they are no different than you. That's one of the great lessons I learned when I toured the country many years ago for this book and for Your Erroneous Zones, and met appearing on The Tonight Show many times, and then Dinah Shore Show and John Davidson, and all of these shows that were very, very popular at that time. And I met so many of the top stars in music and in entertainment and sports and the recording industry, and it was always interesting to me that none of them, these were the people that were your heroes. None of them were any better than I was. I remember what President Carter said when he was running for office, and they asked him if he thought he was qualified to run for president. He said, well, I really never thought I was until I met all the other people who were running, and then I felt I was just as qualified as they were. And that's always the effect that it has on me when I meet somebody who's in this high position of authority, and I meet them and I talk with them and I find out that they have the same difficulties and the same foibles and the same problems and the same pimples and the little blemishes, and they smell bad too when they wake up in the morning, and they're not any better or different than any of the rest of us. You are human. You are connected to all the rest of us through that invisible intelligence that runs through all form in the universe. And you are just as valuable, and in God's eyes, no one is any better than anyone else. Know that. And know that it's not only true in God's eyes, but it's true in your eyes as well. Love is the truest antidote to fear and doubt. When you feel unconditional love for yourself as a divine creation who is here with a purpose, you release all doubt and fear concerning yourself and your place in the world. Therefore, when you experience a moment of fear and doubt, give yourself a portion of mental love and remind yourself that you are a holy creation. As you practice sending yourself love, that becomes what you have to give away. And it is also true that the more love you contain, the less room you have for the energy of fear and doubt. The banishment of doubt from your life forever will put you in touch with a mysterious power that previously had been obscured. I encourage you to let go of the doubt that you were so carefully nurtured on and let in a new knowing. The famous Native American Sitting Bull described this power in the following words. He says, "Behold, my brothers, the spring has come. The earth has received the embraces of the sun, and we shall soon see the results of that love. Every seed is awakened, and so has all animal life. It is through this mysterious power that we too have our being. Notice that Sitting Bull refers to this power as love. That love within all things is also within you. Send doubt out of your consciousness and welcome knowing. This first key to higher awareness is also spoken of in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 30, verse 14. It is something very near to you, already in your mouths and in your hearts. You have only to carry it out. I leave the rest up to you. You have only to banish the doubt and carry it out. Banishing the doubt is the first of the 4 keys to higher awareness. The second is called cultivating the witness. There are many benefits from assuming this witness stance. I ask you to shift your self-perception and cultivate a higher aspect of yourself known as the compassionate witness. Rather than think of yourself as a human being who has thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, begin practicing stepping outside of yourself. So what does it mean to be the witness? Take a moment to reflect on how you view yourself. As you do this, think of what you might mean if you said, "I was thinking to myself." You'll find that the phrase implies that there are 2 people rather than one. One person is the I doing the thinking. The other person is the self receiving the thinker's thoughts. The I is talking to the self, which, when you really examine your inner dialogue, you know you do hundreds of times each day. When you cultivate the witness, you remove yourself from both the I and the self position. Here, from an invisible space outside of your physical body, the witness is detached from your emotions and feelings and behaviors. Here, the witness lovingly watches your entire life transpire. So why become the witness? In my world, nothing ever goes wrong. These words were spoken by Nisargadatta Maharaj in response to an interviewer who, in exasperation, asked Maharaj to talk about the problems in his life. It is for me the single most powerful affirmation I have ever heard. I use it every day of my life, and I have it posted strategically in my office as a daily reminder of its supreme value in my life. In my world, nothing ever goes wrong. Within all of us is the eternal, changeless dimension of our higher spiritual selves. This is the invisible I that talks to the physical self. This is the thinker of the thought. This compassionate observer is not revealed with scientific instruments and doesn't appear on autopsy reports. When you are genuinely able to live in that spiritual domain of the witness, then nothing goes wrong, because wrong is not possible for the witness. It is all in order. Nothing is questioned from that perspective. It is like being able to live in heaven, where eternity and the soul are, at the same time that you are within the physical body. But in this space, the body is not the focal point of existence. I am not suggesting that you need to sit in an ashram and discard all of your physical possessions in order to find this key to higher awareness, although that certainly is a possibility. Instead, I want you to consider how these words of nothing ever going wrong, of having no problems, and of living in a world of the changeless apply to your spiritual awakening. There is so much to learn from these ideas. Cultivating the witness will put you on the path where your higher, sacred self begins to influence your physical, ego self instead of the other way around. As Nisargadatta Maharaj puts it, give it your full attention. Examine it with loving care, and you will discover heights and depths of being which you did not dream of, engrossed as you are in your puny image of yourself. These are startling words describing the power and the value of cultivating the witness. The ordinary way of attachment and suffering can be changed when you learn to access and cultivate the witness attitude of detachment and observation. In order to cultivate your witness, you need to learn to observe your reactions in order to go beyond them. It is the going beyond that is the crux of the sacred quest. True awareness is a state of pure witnessing, without any attempt to fix or change that which is being witnessed. It is a kind of non-judgmental love that, by itself, is healing. Even if what you observe is sickness or infirmity, the compassionate witness notes the trouble spots and observes them with unconditional love. The absence of judgment in the act of observation itself contributes the appropriate energy of love that the situation needs. The more you can practice witnessing in this way, the more you will find that the mere act of non-judgmental witnessing will keep your life moving on its sacred quest. The mechanics of creation are such that where you place your loving attention and maintain it is where the wave begins making the shift from nowhere to now here. able to perform miracles and attract miracles into your life, you have to purify this temple that you live in. And your temple, the temple that you live in, is something that was intended into this universe with perfection. And any energy that comes into it, like yesterday I demonstrated the impact of aspartame and saccharin on the body. In 1,000 out of 1,000 cases in the eye of the eye, Hawkins describes how it doesn't make any difference whether the person knows or doesn't know. Whenever you put that artificial substance into your body, you are weakening your body. And letting go of addictions and letting go of the belief that these are things that have more power over you than you have to let go of them is one of the energy levels below that calibrates below 200. It isn't spirituality in this presentation here today is not about what church you attend and what scriptures you read. It's about how you stay connected to the perfection from which you were intended in the very first place. And I'd like you to really understand that. And when you do, you'll understand that anything that you do that is self-defeating to this temple, as the Sufis used to say, if you don't have a temple in your heart, you'll never find your heart in a temple. And it's about having a temple in your heart. It's about staying connected. And when you do, exercise becomes a regular part of your life. It's a spiritual experience. The foods that you eat become a spiritual experience. The music that you listen to becomes a spiritual experience. The books that you allow into your home, the programs that you allow to be on your television set, the kinds of ideas that you read in newspapers. So it's this force and counterforce thing. Now, as individuals, we understand when the World Trade Center was hit, our first impact, our first inclination was to be kind. What can we do? And you saw people donating blood. We had more blood donated in the first few hours after that than they had to tell people to stop doing it. They had people getting into their fire trucks in Iowa and driving them all the way to Manhattan. They had people going into burning buildings and taking people out. Our whole sense of compassion, because compassion is one of the highest energy levels that you can reach. It calibrates around 470. That when you have compassion in your heart for those who are operating or living at lower levels. And I remember the story that I heard shortly after the World Trade Center disaster, and it was of grandfather talking to his grandson. And the grandson was looking up at his grandpa, and his grandpa said, you know, he said, I feel as if I have two wolves barking inside of me. He said, the first wolf is filled with anger and hatred and bitterness and mostly revenge. And then he said, I have a second wolf barking inside of me who is filled with love and kindness and compassion and even forgiveness. And the grandson looked up at his grandpa and said, which wolf do you think will win, Grandpa? And his grandfather responded, whichever one I feed. And we have to look at what we feed internally in ourselves. When Einstein reminded us that until we come up with an alternative to using force as a way of resolving our disputes, we are doomed as a people to destroy ourselves. We'll destroy ourselves. The weapons that we have put aside in order to resolve our disputes cannot even be used. Because if we explode them and the wind changes, it blows back on us the very thing that we are attempting to put onto our enemies.
How can we look upon all that we've done or failed to do and view it through the lens of our magnificence, especially when we've been trained to feel shame and self-reproach as a result of our perceived failures or flaws? We've all reacted to situations in the past in ways that we wouldn't want to today. I personally have done many things that I wouldn't choose to repeat, yet every recovering or recovered addict looks back with gratitude for the experience that brought him or her to a higher, more loving, sober place. As I've said in other places, true nobility is not about being better than someone else. It's about being better than you used to be. Every single experience in my life, right up to this day, was something I needed to go through in order to get to be here now, writing these words. What proof can I offer for this assertion? It happened. That's all the proof I need. As we look back on our life, we've failed at nothing. All we've done is produce some results. It's imperative that we send love to those who were hurt by us and forgiveness to ourselves to heal our inner agony. We can then view it all as what we needed to experience in order to get to a higher place. One thing I've learned in my 65 years is that virtually every spiritual advance I've made toward a higher, closer alignment with God energy has been preceded by some kind of a fall from grace. Such mistakes, in quote, allow me to write and speak from a more compassionate stance. That is, they always seem to provide me with the energy to propel myself to a higher place. Truly, I bless all of these failures, in quotes, because I know I needed to go there in order to get here. Be gentle and forgiving with yourself. Abandon any and all shame, and refuse to engage in any self-repudiation. Instead, learn from Leo Tolstoy, who said that the most difficult thing, but an essential one, is to love life, to love it even while one suffers, because life is all, life is God, and to love life means to love God. So love life, every moment of it, especially your blunder-filled past. Dr. Abraham Maslow, perhaps the most influential person in my life many years ago, what is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself. Consider how you might want to follow his advice. You can never be mediocre because you are magnificent in every way. So seek ways to change your awareness of yourself so that you're fully aware of your magnificence and can become receptive to inspiration, your ultimate calling. Our life must be open to Spirit's guidance in order for us to feel inspired. When the calendar becomes frenzied, full of unnecessary turbulence because we fail to simplify, we won't be able to hear those long-distance calls from our source, and we'll slip into stress, anguish, and even depression. So whatever it takes to feel joy, we simply must act upon it. Regardless of our current station in life, we have a spiritual contract to make joy our constant companion. So we must learn to make a conscious choice to say no to anything that takes us away from an inspired life. This can be done gently, while clearly showing others that this is how we choose to live. We can start by turning down requests that involve actions that don't correspond with our inner knowing about why we're here. Even at work, we can find ways to keep ourselves on an inspirational agenda. For example, during my years as a college professor, I recall being asked over and over to partake in activities that didn't correspond with my own inspiration. So I devised a simple solution. I took on more teaching assignments, and in exchange, my colleagues attended curriculum meetings, served on research committees, and wrote building improvement reports. I consistently listened to my heart, which always demanded joy. Keep in mind that it's only difficult or impossible to accomplish joy when we engage in resistant vibrational thinking. If we know that we don't have to live a life stuffed with non-joyful activities, then we can choose the way of inspiration. Opting for joy involves giving ourselves time for play instead of scheduling a workaholic nightmare. We deserve to feel joy. It's our spiritual calling. By giving ourselves free time to read, to meditate, to exercise, and walk in nature, we're inviting the guidance that's waiting patiently to come calling with inspirational messages. The bottom line here is that we can simplify life by cutting down on the busy work that keeps us off purpose. We must curtail such activities and listen to Spirit, staying aware of joy and how simple it is to access. On the fateful day of September 11, 2001, what stuck in my mind were the cell phone calls made by the people on the ill-fated planes. Every single call was made to a loved one to connect back in love or to express final words of love. No one called the office or asked their stockbroker for a final appraisal of their financial status, as relationships that weren't love-based didn't enter the thoughts of those who knew they were leaving this physical world. Their top priority was to be certain to close out their lives in love. Tell the kids that I love them. I love you. Give Mom and Dad my love. Just as love is the priority in the final moments of life, so it must be as we simplify life now. We can go toward a clearer life by examining and purifying our relationships with those we love, with ourselves, and with God. What we're looking for are connections that keep us in an energy of love, which is the highest and fastest energy in the universe.